Good morning. My name is Jeremy Goodwin, and today I'm presenting before you my silhouette project that we did in Mr. Thompson's U.S. History class. I did my project on John Steinbeck. And John Steinbeck was a writer in the era of the Harlem Renaissance. So during this process, a couple questions were answered. The questions were how this person came to be, and what was it like in the Harlem Renaissance. Though John Steinbeck wasn't a really big part of the Harlem Renaissance, like he wasn't really particularly compared to the Harlem Renaissance or paired with the Harlem Renaissance, we still were learning about that time period. So the Harlem Renaissance was basically just art everywhere. So it makes sense that John Steinbeck was a writer. Now, John Steinbeck would really just lock himself in his room for hours on end and just write until he finished a poem, a book, or anything. So he decided that he was going to be a writer at the age of 13, which is like really young. I feel is really young to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life. We went through a process that took about 3 weeks to complete. The first step of the process was research. The research took about 1 to 3 days, depending on who you are. And during this time, I just took and researched John Steinbeck. I went to a couple different websites, read a biography on him, and so that I could have enough information to do this project. Then we had to compile from that research a rough draft. And so the rough draft was actually the hardest part for me, because I find it a little hard to take that research and put it onto paper where so I have to find different words to put in there. Seeing as also I do research in bullet points and just jot down thoughts. We went through during this process. Then we went to the final draft. We went to the final draft. The final draft for me was actually really easy, because even though the rough draft was really hard for me to do, apparently I did it well. And so my teacher didn't have that many corrections on it, so he just let me go and type my rough draft up and put it on this piece of cardstock, and then we did a silhouette of our face on silhouette paper, which is white on one side and then black on the other if you haven't seen it before. We actually did the silhouettes in this room. And so the silhouette is supposed to resemble like a portrait of somebody else, but seeing as it'd be hard to get somebody that died a little while back, so we had to do it ourselves. The habits that we used in this project there was a few of them, but not many, seeing as it was a single project, not a group project. Our teacher did leave the classroom a couple of times for like 30 minutes at a time or something, and so we had to use integrity there to just do our work and not break out in a fight or something. I definitely had to use creativity on the rough draft, because getting from those bullet points in my research and putting it on paper, I had to use creativity and effective communication, because even though it's writing, you still have to get your point across. This project would be very useful, I feel, in like college, or like for me, I've also been debating between a couple jobs, one being a historian, and so that would be it'd be very useful to have this information that I know on just, it might just be one person, but that'll still help me. In college, who knows, if I take a history class, I might get assigned John Steinbeck again, and then I can just reference to this, and it'll be, and I can just add a little bit more, because it's definitely not just going to be this much in college, but so wait, I just lost my train. But yeah, so that's how it'd be useful in the real world. And this project, I felt that it came fairly easy to me, but that's because I love history. And so I might not be giving like accurate, like if it's an easy project, but I felt that it was fairly easy and I enjoyed it a lot. There was a couple times actually in my rough draft that I actually had to use perseverance, now that I think of it, because when I was looking at those bullet points, I was like, what was I thinking right there? Because I just write like one or two words, and like when I'm writing my research, I'm like, oh, I'll remember that. I go back to write my rough draft, I'm like, didn't remember that. But a few things about the school year. During this school year was actually, I feel like we did a lot better of a job doing PBL than we did last year. Last year, I felt like it was just you learn this and then you do a big project on it, which actually I researched this also. That would be project-oriented learning. Project-based learning is when you do a project and then learn through that project. I feel like this, when he just project-based learning is like throwing you out in the deep end, and then you have to learn yourself, and like that's what I feel he did good about. He did a good job with this project, because he told us, he assigned us a person, then he said, you guys need to now go do research, and every day we go out and we do research, and then he'd bring us back into a class, and he'd start teaching us about the Harlem Renaissance and one of the people. So I do feel like we being a school in whole, did a much better job at project-based learning than we did last year. That's about it.
What do you think?
Any questions?
When you were doing your research, what was his greatest novel? I mean, what was known as his greatest novel?
Well, the ones I hear about a lot are usually The Grapes of Wrath and Of Mice and Men. Those are probably some of his most popular, and actually I was talking to my brother about The Grapes of Wrath. He did not like that book. I forgot who it is. John Steinbeck died. He was born on 1902. I should have gone over that a long time ago. But and then he died in December 10th, 1968, at the age of 66, from a heart attack in New York City. And then later they interred his ashes back to Salinas, California, where he was born. Any more questions?
What's your goal for next year?
A definite goal for next year is to be more organized, because I've noticed that a couple of my grades have been slipping from my unorganization, so that's a definite goal for me. Along with playing a sport, if not two.
minutes.
Excellent
Good job.
Good job.
Yes.
Wait, no, I'm in here for a student panel.